Human beings are part of nature, but as our population grows and industrialization spreads, our relationship with other species has become more complicated. Habitat loss, environmental pressures, and rapid development have forced wildlife to adapt in ways that often bring them closer to us. Sometimes, these encounters can feel like an attack, almost as if nature itself is singling us out, when the reality is that these are responses to the challenges we've created. In this video, we're looking at 5 stories that are examples of this complex interaction between humans and the natural world. Moments where animals seem to target humans, but at their core, are actually a reflection of the changes and pressures we have placed on the species that we share this planet with. Earlier this year, in the picturesque seaside town of Rockport, Massachusetts, an unusual mystery began to unfold. Residents were waking up to discover their parked cars inexplicably damaged. Cracks in side mirrors, shattered back windows, punctured windshields, and over 25 cars vandalized in just a matter of weeks. The town was buzzing with speculation. Who was behind this string of bizarre attacks? Was it a prankster? A disgruntled neighbor maybe? Or something else entirely? No one could pinpoint the culprit. Then one morning, local resident Janelle Favaloro solved the case. She noticed a peculiar sight outside her home. Perched boldly on the side of a truck was a strikingly large black and white bird with a fiery red crest, a Piated Woodpecker. The bird seemed fixated on its own reflection. Then it flew around to the back window and began pecking furiously at the glass. Favaloro managed to snap some photos of the woodpecker as it stared at its reflection, and the mystery was finally solved. "We seem to have a vandal in our neighborhood," she joked with the news. "I'm describing him as 18 to 24 inches tall, wearing black and white with a red hat." But the big question remained. Why would a woodpecker go on a spree of attacking cars? The answer likely lies in the rhythms of nature. Early spring marks the start of mating season, a time when male birds are at their most territorial and aggressive. It's thought that this particular woodpecker mistook its reflection in the glass for a rival male, triggering a relentless attempt to defend its turf. When the pandemic hit in March of 2020, international travel came to a halt, and places that relied on tourism were hit the hardest. In Bali, Indonesia, 80% of the island's economy is centered around tourism, and over the next 2 years, countless restaurants, hotels, and businesses would close forever. But it wasn't just humans that were affected by the sudden stop to tourism. Ubud, located in the central hills of Bali, is home to the sacred monkey forest sanctuary. The forest has 3 Hindu temples inside, each built in the 14th century, and as the name suggests, it's also home to a large group of monkeys. Over 1,200 long-tailed macaques live in and around the sanctuary, and their survival is dependent on tourists. Tourists used to feed the monkeys, but this was leading to a problem with obesity, so giving out food was banned. Instead, a portion of the entrance fees was used to purchase food, primarily sweet potatoes, and the monkeys began to be fed 3 times per day. But they had already learned to associate people with food. Despite the fact that tourists were no longer allowed to feed them, they learned that they could open people's bags in search of something to eat. And when they couldn't find food in the bags, they started taking items like phones, glasses, or hats, knowing that staff would exchange food to get them back. But when the pandemic hit and the tourists stopped visiting, not only could the monkeys no longer steal for food, but the community that runs the sanctuary could no longer afford to feed the monkeys with regularity. This is when their behavior changed. Groups of macaques began venturing out of the sanctuary in search of food. Nearby villages saw a sudden increase in monkey activities. The macaques raided houses, climbed rooftops, and took food wherever they could find it. Religious offerings placed outdoors became easy targets, as did kitchens with open windows or doors. The monkeys grew bold, entering homes when residents weren't looking and stealing snacks and pantry supplies. Residents returning home from the grocery store or the market could hardly get off their motorbikes or out of their cars before monkeys came and tried to steal their groceries. Local residents began to bring food to the sanctuary in hopes of luring the macaques back, but this solution was limited by the financial challenges brought on by the pandemic. Sanctuary staff did their best to feed the monkeys, but donations and resources were stretched thin. The contrast was striking. Inside the sanctuary, there were almost no monkeys, while the roads outside were teeming with them, hoping for handouts from passing motorists. With the reopening of Bali to tourism in 2022, people gradually returned, and over time, the raids subsided as the monkeys went back to the sanctuary, resuming their old routines. Orcas are incredible marine mammals that are typically known for their intelligence and curiosity. But in the summer of 2020, orcas around the Iberian Peninsula and northwestern Africa started to get a bad rap for behaving in an unprecedented way. They were ramming boats, gnawing at rudders, and even disabling and sinking vessels. They were particularly interested in slow-moving, medium-sized sailboats that were closer to the coasts. The incidents were concentrated in the Strait of Gibraltar and along the coasts of Portugal and Spain. Between 2020 and 2024, more than 500 interactions were documented, with some boats sustaining significant damage. The behavior spread from pod to pod, and as many as 31 different individual orcas are thought to have taken part in the strange behavior. The old scientific name for orcas was Orcinus gladiator, which means whale fighter. So the orcas that were attacking the boats began to be referred to as Gladises by researchers, as a nod to their old scientific name. The majority of the attacks were centered around two pods. In one pod, the attacks were led by Gladys Blanca, her offspring Gladys filabris, and her sisters Gladys Dalila and Gladys Clara. The other pod had three orcas that did the majority of the attacking: Gladys Gris, Gladys Peque, and Gladys Negra. All of these orcas were young, mostly being in what would be considered their teenage years. But why were they attacking boats? One theory suggests that the behavior may have originated with Gladys Blanca, who experienced a traumatic encounter with a boat before the attack started. This incident could have triggered a learned response that spread among her pod and eventually onto other pods, as orcas are known for their ability to mimic and share behaviors across social groups. Another theory is that the orcas are simply playing, rather than acting aggressively. A third and more concerning theory suggests that a combination of environmental stressors, constant disturbances from ship traffic, and a depletion of prey due to overfishing, has driven the orcas to deliberately target the vessels that they perceive as a threat. However, the exact motivations behind these attacks remains a mystery. The orcas' actions have caused frustration and fear among sailors. To date, 250 vessels have been significantly damaged, and 4 have ended up sinking from the attacks. It's hoped that this is just a cultural fad among the orcas, that they'll soon lose interest in the activity and it will stop. Until it does, researchers will continue to try to understand it. In the summer of 2011, Scotland's Tornez nuclear power station faced an unexpected and bizarre challenge. The plant, located on the North Sea coast, relies on salt water to cool its reactors. But one day, alarms sounded, signaling a critical issue. The cooling water intake pipes were completely clogged. When they opened them up to see what the problem was, they were shocked to discover that the culprit was a massive swarm of jellyfish. While the intake pipes are equipped with screens to block debris and marine life, the sheer volume of jellyfish overwhelmed the system. Without a steady flow of cooling water, the reactors risked overheating. The plant operators were forced to shut down the plant temporarily to fix the issue. A single day offline ended up costing the plant over £1 million in lost energy production. Jellyfish blooms like the one that struck Tornez are not entirely uncommon. These events occur when jellyfish populations explode due to favorable conditions, such as warmer sea temperatures or changes in ocean currents. While they are a natural occurrence, their sudden and overwhelming presence can wreak havoc on human infrastructure. This wasn't an isolated incident. Similar jellyfish invasions have disrupted nuclear power plants in places like Japan, Sweden, and California. In each case, the jellyfish clogged intake pipes, forcing shutdowns and causing costly repairs. In 2021, Tornez Nuclear Power Station had the same problem happen again, with thousands of jellyfish getting sucked into the cooling pipes. This time, they decided to invest in better preventative measures. The station turned to cutting-edge technology, and now drones patrol the waters, scanning for incoming swarms, and enabling operators to act before disruptions occur. In the late 19th century, a Bengal tigress began to make her mark on history in the forests of Nepal. Tigers don't often attack people, but this tigress seemed to only look for human prey. At first, the incidents were sporadic. Villagers began to notice that those venturing near the forest, often women and children, were disappearing. As time went on, their frequency increased, and fear spread throughout the region. The tigers became bolder and began striking during the day. Entire villages were abandoned as people fled, leaving their homes and livelihoods behind. As the tiger began a series of attacks around the village of Rupal, some hunters were sent in to deal with it unsuccessfully. When they failed, the Nepalese army was called in to deal with the threat. Despite their efforts, the tigress evaded capture, crossing the border into India and continuing her attacks in the Kumaon region. Her movements were calculated, often traveling far from her last strike to avoid detection. By the time she reached Champawat, she had become infamous, with over 200 victims reported in Nepal and over 200 more in India. In 1907, the British colonial government enlisted hunter Jim Corbett to track and stop the tigress, which had now gained the nickname of the Champawat tiger. It took a team of over 300 volunteers to find her and put an end to her reign of terror, when Corbett managed to shoot her as she charged at him. After examining her body, he realized that she had been injured some time ago by a hunter. Someone had shot her in the face, damaging the teeth on the right side of her mouth. This likely made it difficult to hunt her normal prey, leading her to attack people as a last resort. For Corbett, the experience was transformative. He shifted his focus from hunting to conservation, dedicating the rest of his life to protecting wildlife and their habitats. His legacy lives on in the Jim Corbett National Park, India's oldest national park, which stands as a testament to the needed balance between humans and the natural world. And that's it for this week's video. I need to say a special thanks to my patrons. Without their ongoing support, I wouldn't be able to produce a video like this every week. If you want to support the channel, consider joining us on Patreon. The link is in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.